Into the unknown. The boy stood at the barn door, his hand resting on the old wooden frame. Behind him, the alien girl slept peacefully for the first time, his blanket wrapped tightly around her. Outside, the 100 warriors waited, their glowing eyes never leaving him. The silence was heavy, as though the entire universe held its breath. He knew life would never be the same. His quiet farm, his simple nights by the fire, his lonely chores, all of it had ended the moment he gave away his blanket. That act had pulled him into a destiny too large to understand. The leader raised his staff once more. A beam of soft light stretched from the sky and touched the earth before the barn. It wasn't harsh or blinding. It was warm, inviting, like a road made of stars. The warrior stepped aside, leaving the boy a clear path. His heart pounded. He whispered to himself, "Do I really walk into this? Or do I close the door and pretend none of it ever happened?" But even as he thought it, he knew the answer. The girl was in his care now. The blanket had bound them. And the warriors had made it clear he was no longer just a boy. He was part of their future. The girl stirred and opened her silver eyes. She looked at him with quiet strength. Her weak hand reached for his, her fingers brushing his palm. No words were needed. She trusted him completely. The boy nodded slowly. "All right," he whispered. "We go together." He stepped forward into the light. The ground beneath him hummed as though alive. The warriors lowered their heads in unison, their armor glowing brighter, their weapons held like banners of respect. For the first time, the boy felt the weight of honor pressing down on him, not crushing but steady, guiding. As he moved closer to the beam, the leader spoke again. His words were broken but clear enough. "You gave hope. Now you carry destiny." The boy swallowed hard. Destiny was a word he had never thought about. His life had been too small for it. But now, with each step, he felt the meaning grow inside him. The light swallowed him, lifting him gently off the ground. The barn, the fields, the familiar world below, everything began to fade. The girl clung to him, her silver eyes glowing brighter in the light. For the first time, she didn't look weak. She looked like someone awakening to her true self. Above them, a vast ship waited. Its size was beyond imagination, a giant shadow stretching across the stars. When the boy saw it, his breath caught. It was not just a vessel. It was a city in the sky, alive with power, waiting for them. The warriors followed, rising into the light like silent guardians. Together they entered the ship, leaving the earth behind. Inside, the boy's senses were overwhelmed. The walls glowed with soft colors that shifted like waves. Strange symbols floated in the air, alive and moving. The air was warm, almost like being inside the heart of a fire that did not burn. The girl leaned against him, whispering words he couldn't understand. But her smile told him enough. This was her home. The leader approached, his glowing tattoos brighter than ever. He pointed at the boy, then at the girl, then at the blanket around her shoulders. His voice echoed through the ship like thunder. "You gave her life. You gave her trust. You are chosen." The boy's stomach turned. Chosen? He was just a farm boy, not a warrior, not a hero. But as he looked at the girl, he realized he had no choice but to rise to it. The leader turned, showing him a massive window that stretched across the ship. Beyond it lay the endless stars, shining like scattered diamonds. But far in the distance, darker shapes moved, shadows vast and menacing, swallowing the starlight as they advanced. The boy's chest tightened. He understood without words. This was not just about saving one girl. There was a greater threat, something dangerous enough to bring 100 warriors to his world in desperation. And somehow, he was now part of the answer. The girl squeezed his hand. Her silver eyes locked on his, no fear in them, only faith. For the first time, the boy felt it too. Maybe being human, maybe being someone who still believed in kindness was exactly what they needed. He whispered softly, almost to himself, "All right, if this is what's ahead, I'll face it." The leader nodded once, as if he had heard the boy's quiet vow. Then he raised his staff high, and the ship roared to life. Engines thundered like storms. The stars stretched into streaks of light, and the boy's world fell away behind him. He had stepped into the unknown, not as a farmer, not as a child of Earth, but as the human who gave a dying alien girl his blanket and became the hope of 100 warriors. The future was uncertain. The danger was vast, but the boy was ready, because sometimes the smallest act of kindness could change the fate of worlds. The secret of the blanket. The barn was still, but the air around it felt alive. Outside, 100 alien warriors stood silently, their glowing weapons dimmed, their eyes fixed on the boy who had made his choice. Inside, the boy sat close to the fragile girl, his blanket wrapped tightly around her small body. For the boy, it had been nothing more than an act of kindness. He had given away the only warmth he had on that freezing night. But to the warriors outside, the blanket had become something else, something greater. The leader stepped closer to the barn door. He pressed a hand against the wood and it glowed faintly under his touch. His deep voice rumbled again, slow and heavy, carrying words the boy could only partly understand. You gave warmth, you gave life now. It is sacred, the boy frowned, confused. He looked at the blanket wrapped around the girl. It was old, worn, patched in places. To him it was nothing special, just fabric, just comfort against the cold. But the way the leader spoke, it was as though the blanket had transformed into a holy relic. The girl's silver eyes opened again, and she looked down at the blanket. Her trembling hands touched its edges, her fingers curling around the rough fabric as though it was the most precious thing in the world. A weak smile crossed her lips. She whispered a word softly, different this time, but filled with emotion. The boy leaned closer. It's just a blanket, he whispered almost apologetically. It's nothing. But the girl shook her head weakly. She whispered again, her eyes fixed on his as if trying to tell him that it wasn't nothing, that to her it was everything. The leader outside spoke again, his voice stronger now. Symbol, bond, life. His eyes burned as he stared at the boy. You gave her your warmth, now you are bound. Forever. The boy's chest tightened. Bound it to her? To them? He wanted to argue, to explain that it had only been an act of kindness, not a promise, not a destiny. But when he looked at the girl's glowing eyes, he couldn't deny the truth. In saving her, he had stepped into something far bigger than himself. The girl pulled the blanket tighter around her shoulders, as if drawing strength from it. For a moment, the trembling in her body eased. Her breathing grew steadier, her eyes brighter. It was as though the warmth of the fabric carried more than heat. It carried hope. The boy remembered how she had looked when he first found her, broken, freezing, close to death. And now, wrapped in his blanket, she looked alive again, not fully strong, but no longer lost. The warriors outside began to strike the earth softly with their weapons, a slow rhythm that echoed like a heartbeat. It was not a threat. It was something else, a ritual, a sign of respect. Their leader lowered his head once more, his glowing tattoos pulsing faintly. The boy's mind raced. Why would they honor me for this? Why would they treat a blanket like it was sacred? The girl leaned against him weakly. She spoke again, this time stringing together a few soft words in her own tongue. Her voice was fragile, but her tone was gentle, full of meaning. The boy wished he could understand, but even without knowing the language, he felt it. She was thanking him. Not just for saving her life, but for giving her something no warrior, no army could have offered. Human kindness. He swallowed hard. His quiet life had never prepared him for this. He had never been anyone important, never been part of something greater. But now these beings looked at him as though he carried their future. And all of it had started with one simple act, sharing a blanket. The leader stepped back, raising his staff toward the sky. At once, the strange lights above, the ships he had seen earlier, glowed brighter. The earth shook faintly as if the world itself recognized the boy's choice. The girl's silver eyes softened and she whispered one last word. This time she pressed her hand against the blanket, then against his chest as if showing him that they were now connected. Her weak fingers lingered there, her eyes never leaving his. The boy's breath caught. He understood now. Not the language, not the full truth, but enough. The blanket was no longer just cloth. It was a symbol, a promise, a bridge between two worlds, and that meant something terrifying. If the warriors believed he was bound to her, if they believed his simple kindness had made him part of their destiny, then his life was no longer his own. The boy looked out at the circle of glowing warriors and the silent ships above. His barn, once the center of his quiet life, had become the heart of something vast and dangerous. His gift of warmth had been transformed into a bond he could never break. The girl closed her eyes again, resting against him, but her faint smile remained. She trusted him. She believed in him. The boy whispered into the night, his voice trembling but steady. I don't know what any of this means. But if this is what I've started, I'll see it through. The blanket, once a simple shield against the cold, had become a banner of destiny. And soon the boy would discover the true cost of carrying it. The choice of the boy. The barn was silent, yet the weight of 100 kneeling warriors pressed against the boy's chest like a storm. Their leader's sharp eyes glowed faintly in the moonlight, still fixed on him, still pointing toward the barn. The boy could not escape the truth. They were not only here for the girl, they were here for him too. The girl's hand tightened weakly around his. Her silver eyes pleaded with him, glowing brighter now, shimmering like stars in the dark. She whispered the same word again, the one she had repeated since the moment she opened her eyes. He still didn't understand the language, but the meaning was clear. She needed him. The boy's throat went dry. Me? Why me? I'm no warrior. I'm no leader. I'm just a boy with a barn, a blanket, and a quiet life. The leader of the warriors stepped forward. He raised his glowing staff, and a low hum filled the night. Then in broken English, strange and rough but understandable, he spoke. You saved her. The boy froze. He hadn't expected to understand a single word from these beings. Yet the leader's voice was clear enough. You are chosen, the leader said slowly. He pointed again, this time at both the boy and the girl together. His voice rumbled with weight, with authority. She lives because of you. Her life is yours. Our lives are yours. The boy stumbled back, his heart hammering in his chest. No, I didn't. I just gave her a blanket. His voice cracked with fear and disbelief. But the leader's words only grew heavier. One act, one choice, changes destiny. You gave warmth. You gave life. Now, you are one of us. The boy shook his head furiously. I don't want this. I didn't ask for this. I don't even know who she is. His voice echoed against the wooden walls of the barn. The girl's eyes filled with tears. She struggled to speak, whispering words in her own tongue, her fragile voice trembling. She reached toward him again, her hand cold and shaking, but her eyes desperate. The boy could not understand the language, but he understood her fear. If he turned away now, if he refused her, she would be alone. She would die. The warriors outside shifted slightly, their kneeling forms steady but restless, as if waiting for his decision. Their glowing weapons glimmered in the night like sparks ready to ignite. The boy's thoughts raced. He looked at the barn, at the familiar wood and hay, at the lantern still faintly glowing. This was his world, simple, safe, and small. He had lived his whole life here with no questions bigger than fixing fences or feeding animals. But now the sky was full of alien lights. Now 100 warriors bowed at his doorstep. Now a dying girl from the stars held his hand and begged him with her eyes. He was standing between two worlds, one ordinary, one extraordinary. And he had to choose. The leader's voice broke the silence again. Stay here, and forget or come, and rise. Choice is yours. The boy's chest tightened. Stay, and everything might return to normal. No more glowing eyes, no more armies, no more fear. Just the quiet life he had always known. But deep inside, he already knew the truth. Nothing would ever be normal again. Not after tonight. His eyes turned back to the girl. Her lips trembled as she whispered one last word. Different this time, softer, almost like a plea. A single tear slid down her glowing cheek. Something inside him shifted. He remembered the moment he found her in the cold, the way she had clung to life, the way she had clung to him. He remembered the way her hand had gripped his wrist, as if she had already chosen him before he ever had the chance to choose himself. The boy took a deep breath. His fear did not vanish, but something stronger rose with it. Courage. He turned toward the leader outside, his voice unsteady but clear. If I go, what happens to me? The leader's eyes burned brighter. It'll never be the same. You will walk among stars. You will fight. You will lead. You will bear her fate. And ours. The boy hesitated. His hands shook, his legs trembled, but his eyes drifted back to the girl. She was watching him, waiting, her silver eyes shimmering with fragile hope. Finally, he whispered, almost to himself, I can't leave her. Not now. The leader lowered his head slightly, a gesture of respect. The warriors outside pounded their weapons softly against the earth, a sound like distant thunder. The girl closed her eyes, relief washing over her face. A faint smile touched her lips even in her weakness. The boy sat down beside her, his hand still in hers, and realized the truth. His life of fences and fields was gone. His choice had been made. The quiet boy of the barn was gone. The warriors kneel. The boy could hardly believe his eyes. One moment he was sure the barn would be torn apart by glowing weapons and armored hands. The next 100 alien warriors were kneeling before it, their heads bowed low, their weapons resting against the cold earth. The silence was heavy, almost holy. The only sound was the boy's own racing heartbeat. His breath came in short gasps as he stared through the cracks of the barn wall, watching the scene unfold. Inside, the girl's glowing eyes were fixed on the kneeling warriors. For the first time since he had found her, there was no fear in her face. Instead, there was something else: recognition. Her lips parted and she whispered a word. It was soft, fragile, but it carried weight, as though it had been spoken for centuries. The boy did not understand, but the warriors outside seemed to hear it even from a distance. Their bodies lowered further, their armor shining faintly in the moonlight. The boy stepped back from the wall, his mind spinning. Who is she? He thought. Why are they bowing to her? Just hours ago she had been nothing more than a dying stranger in the cold. Now it seemed she was something far greater. The barn door creaked. The leader rose from his kneeling position and stepped forward. His armor was scarred and ancient, glowing with silver lines that pulsed like veins of light. His helmet shifted as he placed a hand upon it, pulling it free. The boy's breath caught. The alien leader's face was unlike any he had ever imagined. His skin was marked with strange symbols, etched like glowing tattoos across his cheeks and forehead. His eyes were sharp, deep, filled with years of battle. But when they lifted toward the barn, there was no hatred. There was reverence. He spoke. The words were strange, foreign, but his tone carried a message the boy could feel in his bones. Respect, loyalty, fear. The girl's silver eyes filled with tears. She tried to sit up, her weak body trembling, but she pressed her palm against her chest and spoke in return. Her voice cracked, but her words rang with strength, as if she was not speaking only to the leader but to all 100 warriors. The boy watched, stunned. He could not understand their language, but he understood the power in the moment. She was more than just one of them. She was above them. The leader bent down on one knee again, lowering his head. And then, as if by command, every warrior followed, their armor clinking softly in the night air. 100 warriors bowed not to a weapon, not to a king, but to the weak, shivering girl inside his barn. The boy's throat tightened. He turned back to her, whispering almost to himself, "Who are you?" Her glowing eyes met his. For the first time, she did not look like a stranger. She looked like someone carrying a secret too heavy for one person to hold. The boy sat frozen, torn between awe and fear. These warriors were not here to kill her. They were here to serve her. But that truth only brought more questions. Why was she on Earth? Why was she dying? Why had she been alone, abandoned in the cold night until he found her? The girl reached for him weakly, her fingers brushing against his hand. She whispered another word, different from before, softer, almost fragile. Her eyes searched his as if begging him to understand. He shook his head helplessly. "I don't know what you mean," he whispered back. But still, he did not pull his hand away. The leader outside raised his head slowly, his sharp eyes glinting. He lifted his hand and pointed, not at the girl, but at the barn. At the boy froze, his stomach twisting. He did not know the words being spoken, but he understood the gesture. The warriors had seen him. They had seen the human who gave their leader warmth. And now, they were waiting for something from him. His heart pounded. He was just a farm boy with no power, no strength, no reason to stand before an army. And yet here he was, trapped between fear and destiny. The girl's weak voice broke the silence again. She whispered the same word she had told him before, the one she had spoken while holding his wrist. She looked at him now with desperation, her silver eyes shimmering with both fear and hope. The boy's hands shook. He had no idea what she wanted from him, what these warriors expected of him, or what dangers were waiting beyond this moment. But deep inside, something told him that his simple act, offering a blanket to a dying stranger, had placed him in the middle of something far greater than himself. The barn felt smaller, tighter, as the air outside grew heavy with waiting. 100 warriors knelt in silence. Their leader pointed toward him, and the girl, with all her fragile strength, was asking him, pleading with him to stand beside her. The boy swallowed hard. His quiet life was over. Whatever was happening, whatever these warriors wanted, there was no turning back now. And as the cold night wrapped around the barn, the boy realized something that made his skin crawl. The warriors weren't kneeling to the girl alone. They were kneeling to both of them. 100 shadows in the night. The night outside grew darker, heavier, as if the sky itself was holding its breath. The boy sat in the barn staring at the weak lantern light. The strange girl lay on the hay, still wrapped in his blanket, her glowing eyes now closed but her breathing shallow. He wanted to believe she was safe for now, but deep inside he knew danger was close. Then he heard it. At first it was faint. A low rumble like distant thunder, but the sky was clear, no storm clouds, no rain. The sound grew louder, stronger, until the wooden walls of the barn began to vibrate. The boy's stomach tightened. This was not thunder. This was something else. He hurried to the door and pushed it open just a crack. His eyes widened. Across the field, shadows were moving. Many shadows, too many. At first he thought they were just tricks of the night. But then the moon broke through the clouds and the truth revealed itself. They were warriors. At least 100 of them, marching silently through the tall grass. Their armor gleamed faintly under the moonlight, glowing with strange symbols that pulsed like fireflies. They carried weapons unlike anything the boy had ever seen. Blades curved like crescent moons, staffs that sparked with faint energy, and shields that shimmered as though alive. The boy's throat went dry. He counted as quickly as his terrified mind allowed, but there were too many. 100, maybe more. And all of them were heading toward his barn. He stepped back, heart pounding in his chest. Fear screamed at him to run, to hide, to abandon the strange girl before she brought disaster to his home. But when he turned, his eyes fell on her again. Small, fragile, wrapped in his blanket. Her body trembling even in sleep. He could not leave her. Not now, not after he had promised. The ground trembled as the warriors drew closer. Their march was silent yet heavy like a storm of footsteps. The boy blew out the lantern quickly, plunging the barn into darkness. He pressed his back against the wooden wall, trying to quiet his own breath. Through the cracks of the barn, he watched. The warriors spread out across the field, surrounding the barn in a wide circle. Their movements were precise, disciplined, almost like a ritual. Not one of them made a sound. It was as if they had done this many times before. The boy's palms grew sweaty. His thoughts raced. Were they here to kill her? Were they here to kill him too? Suddenly the girl stirred. Her silver eyes snapped open, glowing brighter than before. She sat up weakly, her gaze sharp with fear. She looked toward the walls, toward the shadows moving outside. Then she whispered the same word as before. The word she had spoken when she first grabbed his wrist. The boy didn't understand the meaning, but he understood the fear behind it. She knew them. She had been running from them. The barn door shook suddenly. One of the warriors had stepped forward. He raised his glowing staff, and the barn doors lit up with strange patterns of light as if marked by invisible fire. The boy jumped back, grabbing a pitchfork, the only weapon he could find, though he knew it would be useless against them. The girl's voice grew louder now. She whispered faster, repeating the same word again and again. Her eyes locked on his, begging him not to give her away. The boy's chest ached. He felt trapped. 100 armed warriors outside. A dying alien girl inside, and only his courage standing between them. The leader of the warriors finally stepped forward. His armor was darker, heavier, marked with scars and glowing veins of silver. He raised his hand, and at once all the other warriors stopped moving. The silence was thick, like the night was waiting for something. The leader pointed toward the barn. The boy's breath caught. This is it, he thought. They're coming for her. For both of us. But then something unexpected happened. Instead of attacking, instead of breaking down the door, the warriors did something no one could have imagined. They knelt, one by one. Every single warrior bent down on one knee. Their weapons lowered, their heads bowed toward the barn. The boy's eyes widened in shock. His grip on the pitchfork loosened. He looked back at the girl. Her silver eyes were wide open now, filled with tears. She pressed a trembling hand to her chest and whispered something softer this time, almost like a name. The boy didn't know what was happening, but he knew this. These warriors were not here to destroy her. They were here for her, to follow her. To obey her? The barn door glowed again as the leader stepped closer. His voice, deep and heavy, broke the silence. He spoke in a strange tongue, but even without understanding, the boy felt the weight of the words. It was respect. It was loyalty. And it was fear. The boy's world, once quiet and simple, had now become the center of something far larger than himself. The girl looked at him, her silver eyes wet with tears, and for the first time, he realized she was not just an alien. She was something more, someone important. And the 100 shadows outside were not enemies. They were her army. The girl's eyes opened. The boy sat silently beside the strange figure, his blanket wrapped around her thin body. The lantern's small flame flickered against the barn wall, throwing long shadows across the hay. He could hear her shallow breaths, weak and uneven, as if each one might be her last. For a long moment he wondered if she would ever wake. Fear whispered in his mind. What if she dies here in my barn? What if someone finds me with her? But another voice inside him said something else. You couldn't just leave her outside. You did the right thing. Then, slowly, the girl's eyes opened. They were unlike anything he had ever seen. Not brown, not blue, not green. Her eyes glowed faintly, like liquid silver mixed with soft light. For a second he forgot to breathe. The way she looked at him was not like a stranger staring at another stranger. It was deeper, heavier, as if she was searching his very soul. Her lips moved, but the words that came out were not in English. They were soft, broken, and strange, a language that sounded like music carried by the wind. The boy leaned closer, trying to understand, but he couldn't. Still, he could feel something in the way she spoke. Desperation, fear, and trust. The girl's hand lifted weakly and caught his wrist. Her skin was ice cold, yet her grip was surprisingly strong for someone so close to death. She did not let go. Her glowing eyes stayed fixed on him, and she whispered again, this time slower, as if hoping he might understand. The boy shook his head gently. I don't know what you're saying, he whispered, his voice trembling. But you're safe. I won't hurt you. Something in his tone must have reached her. Her breathing softened and her trembling eased just a little, but she still would not release his wrist. She held on as if he were the only thing keeping her alive. The boy sat there, unsure what to do. He had never seen anything like her, never even imagined such a being could exist. Yet here she was, half conscious in his barn, her silver eyes glowing like tiny moons. Then, something changed. The lantern's flame flickered again, but this time not because of the wind. A strange glow seeped through the cracks of the barn walls, faint but growing stronger. The boy's heart jumped. He turned his head quickly. Outside, beyond the fields, strange lights were moving in the sky. They were not stars. They were not planes. They moved too fast, too silently, weaving like hunters in the night. The girl's eyes widened and fear rushed into them. She gripped his wrist tighter, her lips whispering the same word again and again. The boy didn't understand the word, but he understood the fear. Whoever she was running from, they were here. He hurried to the barn door and peeked outside. The lights were closer now, gliding across the sky like silent fire. The ground seemed to tremble under him, though he could not hear footsteps yet. He rushed back to the girl. Her eyes followed him, wide and desperate. She whispered once more, slower this time, almost begging. Her voice cracked, but the word repeated again, heavy with meaning. The boy placed a hand on her shoulder. I don't understand, he said softly, but I'll keep you safe. I promise. For the first time, a faint relief passed over her face. Her eyes softened, though they still shone with fear. Slowly, she let go of his wrist, but kept her gaze locked on him. It was as if she trusted him now, even if they could not share a single word. The boy sat back, mind racing. Who was she? Why was she here? And what were those lights outside? He wanted to believe this was just a dream, something his tired mind had invented. But the cold hand that had held his wrist, the glowing silver eyes, and the strange voice, none of it was a dream. The girl shifted slightly, her weak body still trembling under his blanket. She closed her eyes again, but her lips moved as if praying. The boy did not know what her prayer meant, but he could feel the weight of it. The glow outside grew brighter, and the boy knew this was only the beginning. Something was coming. Something bigger than anything his quiet life had ever known. He looked at the girl, lying there with her otherworldly face and fragile body, and a thought hit him hard. If she is here, Then others must be here too. The barn, once just an old shelter, now felt like the center of something far greater. The boy's chest tightened with fear, and a strange sense of responsibility. He had given her his blanket, his warmth. Now, without even realizing it, he had also given her his protection. But outside, in the distance, shadows were already moving toward the farm. And soon the boy would discover that kindness could open the door to unimaginable danger. The girl's eyes closed once more, but her whispered words still echoed in his ears. A word he did not understand, but would soon change his life forever. The cold night and a strange cry. It was a cold night on the boy's farm. The wind was sharp, carrying dust across the empty fields, and the old wooden barn creaked with every push of the air. The boy had spent his whole day working, feeding the animals, fixing fences, and carrying heavy water buckets. Now at night he was tired. He sat inside the barn with a small lantern beside him, the weak flame fighting against the darkness. The boy pulled his jacket tight around him. Winter nights in the countryside were not easy, especially when the barn was the only warm place he had. He thought he would spend a quiet night, maybe watch the stars through the small cracks in the roof and then sleep near the hay. Life had always been quiet, and he expected tonight to be the same. But it was not. As the hours passed, the world outside became colder and quieter. Even the animals were silent. Then suddenly the silence broke. From outside, beyond the barn doors, a faint sound rose. It was not the call of an animal, not the cry of a fox or the bark of a dog. It was something else, something strange. The boy froze. His first thought was that maybe someone was out there, a traveler lost in the night. He stood up, holding the lantern high, listening carefully. The sound came again, soft, weak, almost like a whisper carried by the wind. It was a cry, but not fully human. It was fragile, trembling, and filled with pain. His heart began to race. Fear pulled him back, but curiosity pushed him forward. Slowly, he walked to the barn door and opened it just enough to look outside. The fields were empty, the moon hidden behind clouds, and the night felt heavy. But the sound was clearer now, a cry of someone or something suffering. The boy stepped out into the cold air. His breath turned to mist as he moved carefully across the ground, holding the lantern in front of him. Every step made the dry grass crunch under his boots. He followed the sound, his ears guiding him closer and closer. Finally, near the old fence at the edge of the barn, he saw it. A small figure was lying on the ground, half covered in dirt, shivering violently. At first, he thought it was a child, but when he lifted the lantern higher, he realized it was not. The figure had a face that was both human and not human. The skin was pale with a faint silver glow under the moonlight. The hair was long, tangled, and strange, shining faintly as if it caught the light in ways normal hair never could, and the eyes, closed tightly in pain, were larger than any human's, with long, dark lashes wet with tears. The boy's mouth went dry. He wanted to run back into the barn, lock the doors, and pretend he had never seen this. But the figure let out another weak cry, softer this time, like a whisper asking for help. He bent down slowly, his hands shaking. The figure was cold, so cold that even the boy in the freezing night felt the difference. The body trembled uncontrollably, every breath shallow, as if the figure was close to death. It was then that the boy noticed something else. The figure was not dressed like a traveler. There were no normal clothes, only thin, torn fabric that looked burned and strange, as if it had come from somewhere far away. And there were marks, cuts, bruises, and burns across the arms and shoulders. This was not just someone lost in the cold. This was someone who had escaped something terrible. The boy looked around, half expecting to see others nearby. But there was no one. Just the empty land, the cold air, and the dying figure before him. He hesitated, fear fighting inside him. This was no human, but it was alive. It was crying. It was begging for warmth. And in that moment, the boy's heart made the choice his mind was afraid of. He pulled off his own blanket, the only one he had kept in the barn for the cold nights, and wrapped it around the shivering figure. At first, the figure didn't move. Then slowly, the trembling eased just a little. The boy could feel the small rise and fall of the chest, as if life had returned for a moment. He sat beside the figure, confused and scared, but unable to walk away. The lantern's flame flickered in the wind, and the night seemed to grow darker. The boy had no idea who this being was or what danger might follow it. All he knew was that he had given away the only warmth he had, to save a stranger who was not even human. And somewhere deep inside the forest, unseen by him, shadows moved. Many shadows, watching, waiting. The boy had no idea, but his life had just changed forever.